Hello, hello, my emotional wisdom community. How are we doing today? The topic of today's video. It is going to be about isolation, rejection, and shame. Okay? Why? Because they're all intertwined. And the examples that I'm going to be giving you and the perspective that I'm going to be giving you will show how shame plays into the picture, how rejection also is incorporated, and then isolation starts happening through the process. I want to paint the picture of how severe not dealing with rejection and how that rejection, that big rejection and shame that your body undergoes whenever it experiences rejection, your body undergoes shame, and how if we don't address that, it turns into isolation. And why do I feel called and compelled to talk about isolation, rejection, and shame? I've been attracting too many scenarios this past week in reference to that topic, isolation. But it first stemmed from childhood experiences, undergoing a lot of shame because one was exposed to rejection, and then it evolved to isolation, feeling isolated, removing yourself from the family, from the group. Okay, so let me give you an example as to what I'm referring to and why isolation is becoming it's growing. It's getting more common than not. And I'm hearing it louder and louder and louder. And I feel called to really shine light on this because I would hate for you to get to a point where you're now found in this isolation space, where you feel cut off from everyone, where you feel people can't understand you, where you feel like you're not understood, where you feel you're alone in this world, or you feel like you're the only one that can understand yourself. And you really just start creating this bubble because you're convinced, you are actually convinced that no one could really understand you. No one can really feel into you, even you. That's the biggest paradox. So if you're that person that feels like you're the only one that you can depend on, if you're that person that feels alone, if you're that person that has friends yet you don't feel like you're a part of the friends group, like you're in it but you're more so outside looking in, and if that's you, pay very close attention, because this is a very serious topic, a very, very serious topic. And I want to give you examples of why it is very serious and how it can become very dangerous and how we can misconstrue and misunderstand what's happening because we don't have the awareness of emotional awareness, essentially. So because we lack emotional awareness, we can get into a very big pickle that essentially can morph into depression. When you're isolated, when you feel isolated, when you feel you could only depend on yourself, you're the only person you can depend on, or no one understands you, that will turn into depression if you let it go on for too long. It can turn into depression or corner you to where you are believing that you have to be stronger. And the way that the mind plays tricks on you in terms of you needing to be more strong is by closing yourself, by closing your heart, by feeling like you have to keep people at arm's length so they won't faze you. That's not the way to go. That is not the way to go. Okay, so let me jump on the examples and what I've been hearing from people. This past week has been very, very loud. The topic and the concept of rejection and isolation. and feeling major shame around that. Okay? And I want to tell you the evolution of how that happens. Give you an example. I always take it back to childhood. It always goes back to childhood. If you're that person, I repeat again, that feels ostracized, or more so feels like an outsider. Every time you're around functions, family functions, you feel like you're an outsider looking in. You don't really feel like you're part of the group, the friends group, the family. You don't feel like you're part of the team. They're including you, but you don't feel like you're part of the team. You feel like you're from the outside looking in. If that's you, something very, very alarming is happening. Very alarming. And if you don't catch it, it can take you into depression. It can take you into further isolation. You're going to think no one is on your team. You're going to start pushing people away. You're going to start seeing them as threats. But that is not healthy. That is the mind now operating in a very dysfunctional way, and it has now all the momentum in the world to take you to believe that the people outside of you are the threat. So, as an example, that you grew up or you're little, and all of a sudden your parents are, you're going to have a baby brother, and you're around 3, 4, 5. When you're little and you're used to having all the attention, and you need attention, right? Because you feel like you need your parents. And all of a sudden, another sibling comes into the picture, you will feel very confused. As a child, you will be excited, something new, but then you're going to be very confused because the time and attention has to now be shared and divided. As a child, cognitively speaking, the child is not going to know, he or she is not going to have the intellect, the cognitive ability to conclude that, oh, this is my little baby brother and I have to share my time with my little baby brother. He's little and he needs time. That's not how it works. When you're little and you still haven't developed your cognitive aspect of self, you're feeling your way through the world. You're feeling your way through information, through being in the world. You're actually navigating through your felt perception. So if you're feeling like you're not receiving the attention that you were used to receiving, and now you see another person getting the attention that you were once upon a time receiving all of, you're going to be confused about the situation. That is not you being selfish. That is not you being spoiled. That is you genuinely being concerned that that there's another little human being who is they're telling you is your brother. You can't even conceptualize that, but there's another little human being that's taking the attention that you were dependent on, that your livelihood was dependent on. Yes. Children need parents like that, guys. Like, serious. We need our parents to that degree. And especially if you were born in a distressed situation, if mom or dad were in a distressed situation while you were in mom's belly, you are going to need more attention, because being in mom's womb, you're actually marinating in that unsafety, uncertainty, insecurity. So when you're born, you're going to have that imprinted in your somatic body, in your physical nervous system. So if that's the case and you're born under those circumstances of distress, you're going to need more attention to feel sure, safety, security, nurturing. You're going to need that, all the attention in the world. So if you're going to need all the attention in the world, and all of a sudden you have your baby brother born, again, you don't have the cognitive ability to understand that you have a sibling and you have to share your time. It doesn't work like that. That's not how it works. When you're little, there's a huge change. You're not getting the same emotional, physical attention. You have to, right? So if a child who is 3, 4, 2, witnessing another child, another being getting the attention, there's going to be a sense of confusion. When that confusion does not get sorted out, when that confusion does not get sorted out, processed, integrated, if it doesn't properly get addressed, you're going to carry it with you. And what's going to happen is eventually when your cognitive aspect is developed enough to create a story and narrate a story, you're going to feel like left out. You're going to believe that your brother, there's going to be that jealousy, right? And you're going to feel that you were pushed to the side. And let me rewind. Even before your cognitive aspect is developed, you're feeling energetically that you're not getting the same attention that you were once getting. So energetically, there's a sense of rejection. And by virtue of just simply your parents dividing the time to your sibling. But because you're not understanding what's happening, all you really feel, because remember, you're navigating through life through your felt perception, you're feeling that you're no longer getting the attention that you're once dependent on, that your livelihood was dependent on. So what's going to happen is that immediately you're going to go in this feeling of abandonment, like shame, like, what about me? And then whenever you go and grab the baby and you get curious and you touch it and you touch the baby, and let's say you're playing rough, mom or dad says, hey, be nice, be gentle, that's your brother, with that tonality, guess how you're going to perceive it as a child? You're going to perceive it energetically, right? Because you're navigating through life through your felt perception. You're perceiving that tonality, a push away. When mom says, hey, be gentle with your brother, energetically, that feels like a push away. So guess what happens? Immediately, when you feel that push away, you feel rejected. You're internalizing, I'm bad, I'm not wanted, I'm bad. This is what the body does whenever it undergoes shame. And so then the child looks at the baby, assuming that the baby, seeing that the baby's getting more attention, seeing that their brother is getting more attention. Again, the child is not going to know what's happening. The child is confused. The child now says, once upon a time, I had all the attention. Now I don't. I'm playing with this baby or being, this thing, because right, if a child is 2 or 3 years of age, they're curious. They're only going by what mom and dad are saying, but you as a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, you don't have the cognitive ability to really understand what's happening. What you do experience, rather, is you're experiencing through your felt perception as a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old. I don't have the same attention as I once had. I don't have the same nurturing attention and as I once had. In fact, I'm being pushed away. If I get too close to my baby brother, or if they push me away. See, the child is registering neglect. The child is registering and is feeling no longer the same attention that it was once receiving before baby brother was born. When a child develops in this space of fractured perspective, and no one ever guided the child how to really process through what the child was feeling, that child will grow up low-key feeling jealous. And what will fuel that jealousy is when that child keeps on noticing mom or dad favoring their sibling. The child is then going to create a story. As when the child reaches 6, 7, or 8 and their cognitive abilities developed and they're able to narrate and create stories, that child is going to look at their baby brother and say, and feel jealous. And then let's say you're 6 or 7 now and you feel a little jealous and you exhibit those jealous tendencies, mom and dad are going to reprimand you. Then you undergo more shame, embarrassment that you feel jealous because mom or dad tells you that is not a good thing. That is not nice. Being jealous is not a good thing. So you, as a 6, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, you're conflicted because you genuinely have this sense of feeling of jealousy, like, what about me? You're genuinely feeling a lack of attention. You're genuinely feeling like you're no longer, you were kind of tossed to the side. Then you're being reprimanded for feeling that, right? Let's say you exhibit little gestures of jealousy and of little like all of a sudden your parents point it out. They make you the bad guy. They shame you for it. Now you find yourself feeling more shame that you feel the way you do. No one has helped you assess this feeling. And when that happens, you then have to triangulate yourself. You then have to make an enemy out of the part of you that genuinely feels what? Jealous. You now have to make yourself the enemy. You have to now part ways with that emotional feeling of confusion, that emotional feeling of push away, that feeling of rejection. You now have to push that away to survive the environment. Because what? Why? Because you're wanting mom to approve of you. You're wanting dad to approve of you. And clearly you're registering that by being jealous or playing rough or not being kind to your baby brother or sister, you're registering that there's a push away happening there, that you're being told you're not good, you're bad. That's what you're registering, right? You're registering that you're not doing something right. When you're growing up, and ever you do something that is dangerous and you get reprimanded for doing something that is a detriment to you as a child, when your mom says, oh, don't put your finger in that outlet, and your mom kind of uses a higher, like a stern voice, you're going to internalize that as I'm bad. You're not going to be able to differentiate that what you're doing is dangerous. But instead, you're going to internalize the act as I'm bad if you were reprimanded for it. Okay? Let's say you grabbed food and you were not supposed to grab food or snacks, and you're little, and mom then reprimands you or dad for grabbing snacks, and you were not supposed to. You're not going to differentiate the fact that, oh, I haven't eaten first, or, this contains too much sugar, or I'm not supposed to get a snack right now, and that's why I'm being reprimanded. It's not that I'm bad, it's that what I did was bad. You can't differentiate. You'll internalize it as if I'm bad. You'll hear I'm bad, I'm the bad guy, and then you will experience shame. Shame, okay? And shame in the body is literally a response to say, I feel bad. I feel threatened. And so going back to the child that's growing up here, this child, as he's growing up and he's seeing baby brother, he then is noticing. He's depositing proof that baby brother is the center of attention, is more loved than him. If the child is not properly navigating with, and processing the emotion, and no one really has the time for that, we don't even have the awareness for that. Our parents even more so didn't have the awareness to help their children to navigate through emotional conflict. We're very immature. We're very infant in the emotional sector. You see what I mean? We're very infant. We need more awareness in the emotional sector. So a lot of things happen in our infancy that our parents don't have the tools, the emotional awareness to help us navigate through this confusion in the body, this confusion in the felt perception in the emotional sector, because it goes deeper. Emotions are literally attached to your nervous system. I mean, there is this need of emotions. Emotions have a purpose. Emotions are the language of the soul. They're speaking to you that there's a discord internally. So I say this because, you know, it's unfortunate we don't have the intelligence, the emotional intelligence as a human species right now. We're lacking so much of it. And the more we could get courageous and dive into becoming self-aware and learn really what emotions, how we should use our emotions in this human vehicle, my God, this world will be a different place if we actually knew what emotions, how to work emotions, how to actually navigate through life using our internal guiding system, which is emotions. Emotions are our internal guiding system. They are carriers of personal truths, of core beliefs that you've created when you were little. It's important to understand how isolation begins. To conclude with that first example, in terms of you're the older sibling, you see, you know, you have a baby brother, you're 3 or 4 or 5, you don't know how to process this being that now is taking all of the attention that you depended on. That is very, very difficult, especially as a child who is navigating through their life using their felt perception, using their feelings to navigate, to say what they want and what they don't want. And all of a sudden they have a baby brother in the picture, and all of a sudden they don't know what to feel. They're excited. There's a new little baby brother. You're being fed the excitement from mom and dad, but yet you notice something very abrupt is you no longer have the attention that you once had. Now you're noticing mom through energy, through the felt perception. Mom is now attending the baby. Now the baby is the point of attraction. So the child is feeling this happening. You know what I mean? It's not that the child is using just their cognitive, their intellect. The child is seeing and is feeling that mom now is no longer giving him this or her the same attention. That is a fracture if the child is not taught how to process through that. We won't know. Our parents didn't know how to walk us through this catastrophe of a change, because I call it a catastrophe because essentially that's how the child views it when they are not being guided to understand what's happening before them. And let's say this child now is age 10, 9, and he notices or she notices that the child still gets priority. And mind you, when you suffer a trauma, okay, this is very important, when you already suffer a trauma of being second, of being the oldest brother, and then the little brother is getting all the attention, if you're noticing that as you're developing, you will, it's like you will build a skill to detect it more often. It's like you will notice without you even trying that the sibling is getting the attention. That basically you'll notice that the sibling gets priority than you. It's like, because it's something that scared you and you're fractured in that area and you experienced rejection through your felt perception, without you meaning to, your subconscious, unconscious mind is looking for it, is looking for that pattern of brother's better than me, brother's going to get the attention. If this affected you and you never had healing and you were young when you had a little brother come into the picture and you noticed that the attention now went to your little brother, and you never were taught how to process this big change, you will eventually buy into the idea that you don't belong in this family. Yes, you will buy into the idea that you're an outsider now, that you could only depend on yourself, that no one understands you. And want to know what's scarier? Is if you don't heal this, then it starts leaking over to your friend sector. Scary. Then you start feeling like everyone around you. Then you're at work and you notice that there's favoritism. And without you realizing, you're navigating through the world through the lens of that wound of you're tossed to the side or you're secondary. Someone else will come in and take your place. Now you're acutely aware without wanting to every time someone else chooses someone other than you. We don't realize that this fragmentation happening inside of you, this wound, this disconnect happened, example, was when a new sibling came into the picture. And that's where it all began. It was this confusion of emotion. It was this being no longer given the very thing that you needed, attention, nurturing, right? And now you see someone else getting it. You have the belief, you kind of create this distorted belief that you're no longer important. And what's crazy is that you start finding proof as you're developing, as you're growing, you're finding proof that you are an outsider without you realizing it is your trauma that's literally navigating through your life experiences, showing you all the proof in the world that you are secondary or that you are not as important. And that's, oh God, that's such a dangerous road, because people really believe it. People really buy into this. And yes, I'm not saying that you're not seeing people reject you to go to someone else. I'm not saying you're not seeing that. Sure, you're seeing that. Sure, you're actually you're noticing that. But here's the problem. You're noticing it. You might be really noticing fact, real information that's happening before you, or it's information that's distorted through your trauma. So you're walking around making something be mean, something that wasn't intended to be, and or you are tuning in, you are becoming a vibrational match to this rejection. You see what I'm saying? So this vibrational match that you are vibrating in internally, now you're manifesting it over and over and over and over. So either two things: either you misinterpret what's happening in front of you because you're wounded, so you think automatically you're being rejected, or second, you are actually becoming a vibrational match more and more and more to people that are rejecting you, people that are pushing you away. So it's like you're now fueling the belief, your original belief, your original wound. You're now validating it, saying, see, no one understands me. And when you continue to grow up as you're getting older and you're finding proof of this belief, that's when isolation starts kicking in. Depression, disconnection. And when you're isolated, it turns into ailments. It turns, but you start noticing this interesting pattern. It's like depression starts leaking through, and depending on your character, on how you manage to cope with this wound, what I notice that they're running into is they're running more into more rejection. It's happening because you're mirroring it back to you. That's what you're seeing, because that's what you're feeling. So and it's very uncomfortable that it will take you to, if you don't address it, you will reach a point where you feel depressed. No wonder a lot of us humans are trying to, we have emotional issues, we have traumas. And sometimes we don't know, many times we don't know how to gain our power back. But gaining your power back stems from becoming self-aware first. And self-awareness means understanding why you do the things you do today. Is why do I do the things that I do today? Why do I prefer this? Why do I choose this? Why do I like this? Why do I prefer this personality? This individual character that you subscribed to, it is the personalities you decided to embody because they kept you safe in moments of distress. So you're really a combination of personalities that are keeping you safe from your past. Am I making sense? So whatever you're choosing, you're desiring, you're wanting stems from something you had to experience in your past, sometime in your past, what you wanted and what you didn't want. meaning you had to see a consequence. You had to experience something that you ended up realizing, oh, I don't want that. And then now you choose this, who you are today. So the more you understand why, and you become self-aware, why is it that I do the things that I do? Why is it that I choose this over that? Why is it that I prefer to be alone? Why is it that when I'm around a lot of people, I feel depleted? Why is it that I can't really trust people? Why is it when you start asking yourself those questions, you're now opening the door for the reason as to why you don't trust people. So you become self-aware of your shadow self, your shadow aspects, the aspects that you want to run away from and you don't want to remember. But see, the power lies in remembering, learning where you birthed this dysfunctional pattern. In other words, there was always, in your childhood, you were faced with the trauma. And this trauma forced you to protect yourself. And now you embody this personality, to protect yourself from that pain. Do you understand what I'm saying? So by you going back and shining light to the shadow side, you will then learn, you will then discover the whole truth. You will realize why you protect yourself in the way that you do. Because when you were little or when you were young, you were faced with this threat, and now you had to become the embodiment of the aspect that had to protect you from that threat. And so the more you are aware of all of you, even the shadow aspect of self, that's empowerment, because then you're shining light to the darkness. You're actually shining light to the parts of you that you just want away from you. When you shine light and you make that fragment, that part that is in the darkness, a part of you, you're now more whole. That is what integration is. Essentially, you're integrating the aspects of you that you're resisting, that you're like, ooh, stay away, stay away. Second example of how shame and rejection, feeling constant shame and rejection as a child, being pushed away and being, reprimanded, and you not knowing how to differentiate from I'm bad to what I did was bad, right? Could cause for you to feel isolated, like no one understands you. Because when you're feeling this uncomfortable feeling, or let me give you a more precise example. There's another client that I have, who she grew up with brothers rejecting her. So in her household, she grew up with several siblings, and she remembers being rejected by her siblings. So she created this idea and this construct that she wasn't wanted. So she legit subscribed to the belief system that she only had herself to fend for, because mom and dad were constantly busy trying to make ends meet. So mom and dad were gone, and rejection, abandonment, okay? Not intentionally, but indirectly. Then siblings rejected her. So now she's in this, living this reality that she's not worthy and that they're rejecting her. So what happened with her is, for her to cope with this reality, she had to disassociate and embody the idea that, you know what? I don't need anyone. I can do this for myself. I just need me. I don't need my siblings. That's very dangerous. That's very dangerous, because then you carry this personality over into work, into school. You carry this into all gathering and social environments. You now go into these environments that require relationships with other human beings, already putting a wall up. There's already a wall up saying, in that person's perception, you can't come on this other side. You don't understand me. you won't hold the capability to understand me, because that's what they lived in their childhood. In their childhood, they didn't have anyone understand them. In fact, they had to survive a very hostile, a very rejecting environment. And so they can survive. They had to segregate or split from the part of themselves, disconnect from the part of themselves that generated a lot of pain. And so to survive, they embodied the character, the personality of, I don't need anyone. I will do it on my own. But that's so dangerous, because when you now operate under that belief system and perception and personality, that's all you will see. You will see people not being able to understand you. You're attracting people into your reality that can't understand you, because that is what you believe to be true. You're vibrating in a core belief that you believe no one will hold the capability to understand you. And so you become a magnet to that, to people that can't fully understand you, because that's the vibration you're sending out. And if we live in a world of the law of mirroring and law of attraction, you're going to get what you believe. You believe you can't be understood, because that's what you lived when you were little. And so, very dangerous. In addition to, you'll read everything from that lens. You will read everything from that lens of people can't understand me. So even though the outside person really doesn't mean to dismiss you, if they remotely do a gesture that you believe equates to rejection, you immediately are going to interpret that as a rejection, as a attack, and then your body will undergo shame. But when your body undergoes shame, what we tend to do is we believe that, we just have to be more stronger. This means the fact that it's affecting me, that my friends and my colleagues are now shaming me and judging me. I know God wants me to just be stronger. And then I ask, I'm like, well, what does stronger mean? What do you think that means? Because I'm hearing you're closing your heart. You're becoming harder. So you won't get affected by these rejections. And that's exactly it. Then this individual giggled and said, actually, yeah. I was under the impression that God wants me to be stronger, when in all actuality, what I'm really saying is I want to be harder, so it won't affect me. But that's so dangerous. Oh my God, I'll tell you why that's so dangerous. That is so dangerous, because you're going to attract more incidences, the more you close yourself, so you won't let people in, the more you'll be a match to that. People not being able to feel into you. You'll be a match to what you're doing to yourself. So essentially, you're only to protect yourself. The irony, right? I mean, I really want you guys to understand this. The irony here, you're closing your heart to protect your inner child or yourself and your vulnerable self. But what you're really doing is you're affecting yourself. You're cutting your lifeline. You're cutting the flow of love. You are actually severing the lifeline of love. Do you understand how powerful that is? You are affecting you. The moment you need to get harder, the moment you need to protect your vulnerable inner child, when we do that, we're actually closing our hearts. And in turn, we're going to attract more of that isolation reflections, that rejection reflections, that, that hardness. We're going to be a match to more of that. And we're going to interpret and see more of that, because we're, operating from that fractured lens, right? From that fractured perspective. So stay in the example of this person who was met with siblings that were rejected. Her mom and dad was always working to make ends meet, and she grew up feeling like she wasn't understood and she had to fend for herself, which now she's in a position where the problem got bigger. But she was under the impression that what she needed to do is become stronger. The polar opposite. She's being confronted to face herself, to go back into her wound, to basically create integration, to heal. That's what she was being called to do, is to heal. So and what got interesting here is that it actually got bigger. The problem for her grew. Now it went full circle. Now it's her family that is rejecting her. Not just her friends, not just her peers, not just her work. Now it's her siblings who are reflecting this very thing that is scaring her, that she tried to protect herself from. And so all that to say is the problem is growing. It's not minimizing. Her strength, her being stronger and closing her heart, is doing the polar opposite. So she's fueling the rejection. She's fueling the shame. And so the mirror is cornering her. And to top it all off, she ended up generating an ailment. I'm not going to mention the ailment, but she ended up generating an ailment that is life-threatening. And what was crazy is that ailment started generating after the problem got super, super big. And I asked her, I said, is there anyone you trust? And she's a married woman with kids. And she said, no, I don't trust anyone. All that, she's at this place because she created an identity in her childhood that no one understood her, that no one can understand her. She created this belief that no one will be able to hear her and understand her and feel into her and be on her team. And now she's an adult and the issue has amplified and gotten bigger. This is scary, people. This is very, very scary. And I don't think we understand how severe this is. How if we don't go back into ourselves and choose to be courageous, to drop into our vulnerability and feel, us closing our hearts, thinking that that's the solution, is going to kill us. I'm going to repeat that. Us closing our hearts and us thinking that that's the solution so we don't have to feel rejected is only going to take us faster to that place we don't want to be. Whatever place that may be. More of shame, more of rejection, or death. That's why self-awareness and becoming self-aware, the more you are aware of all of you, the more you can have the bigger picture and you can navigate through that awareness. And so isolation is the very scary place to be. I've been there. I was there. I was in a place of isolation where I thought no one could possibly understand me. People cannot feel what I'm feeling. People can't understand me. And I noticed that I couldn't trust my friends. I didn't think they had the capability. What I then started realizing is that it came from my childhood, from my experiences, and I started depositing into these distorted beliefs that no one could understand me. And every time someone couldn't understand me, it was validation to my distorted belief. And until I cornered myself, but moral of the story is I ultimately felt isolated to where I dropped into depression. I experienced deep, deep depression to where my biggest relief was to take my life. That's what I thought. My biggest relief is going to be after I take my life. That was how severe my isolation was, to the point where I felt like the only way out of this hell was to take my life. Going back into my childhood, I was able to understand where it stemmed from and in turn give myself what I needed, rehabilitate myself, start the rehabilitation journey. But you have to connect with that part of you that you disconnected. See, that's the thing. You have to be courageous enough to be like, okay, I'm in the journey of wanting to understand myself. Let me go. Yeah. Wanting to understand myself. Let me go back there. And it's scary and it's hard. But see, I make these videos, showing, I want people to know that if you feel to start thinking, right? Because if you or anyone is feeling like no one could understand you, and you believe like you're safer in your own home, not socializing, and you feel like you're just in a more safer place being in your own space, there's a problem. I mean, I get it. That sometimes it's healthier to be by yourself if you don't have the right group of friends. But then there's a fine line. There's a fine line with that. Because if there's a moment where now you're perceiving everyone to not be safe. Now you're not letting anyone in. And you're filtering people from a fear-based, fractured perspective, belief system, instead of real, like you really using your intuition and determining if that person's not safe, or, oh, that person's not going to take my best interest at heart. You see what I mean? I mean, it gets very dangerous because you start falling into the idea and believing that no one is to be trusted with you. That's fucking lonely. That is lonely, and that is a trap, because the mind is really, really good with trying to convince you that you're the only person that feels like this. It's like the mind wants to tell you you're the only person, no one understands you. Couldn't be further from the truth. And so I invite people, if you're starting to find yourself feeling and believing that the right course, the best course of action is just to keep to yourself and not hang out and not, and just, I'd rather just not be around people. You got to be honest with yourself and have those honest conversations and say, where is this coming from? Could I really see that they're not trustworthy? Or am I just really wounded from betrayal, abandonment issues? You see, like, we have to start getting courageous and ask ourselves those questions. Am I really seeing what I'm seeing? Am I really interpreting the situation like it really is? Because the more you stay in this place of self-rejection and isolation, the more you're going to find all the proof in the world, and you're going to become a match to it, to separation and segregation and rejection and abandonment. So the root of isolation is shame. You experience too much shame. You see rejection happening to you. You feel rejection vibrationally happening to you. Then you have to feel like you are the only person that you can trust. You have to fend for yourself. Then you become isolated from the world and from yourself. So that's how isolation happens, right? And the root of it is shame. And as a child, you experienced shame. You were rejected whenever you were said by an authority figure, no, that's not okay. Or whenever you heard a strong, voice speaking to you, you internalize it as, I'm bad. You then underwent shame. You then feel rejected. You internalize it as a rejection. And then from there, you have this belief that you're bad and that you don't have your parents' support. You don't have your family support. And then you grow up eventually being met with the ultimate feeling of isolation. Like you're the only person you can trust. And even you're not trusting. When you're in a space of isolation, you don't even know that you're in that place. That's the thing. What's so scary is we believe we're genuinely protecting ourselves, and we start believing it is better to be excluded from the rest because it's not dangerous. You're not positioning yourself for potential rejection. So you only have you. Little do you know that as you were removing yourself from everyone in the world, you're rejecting you. You're saying, my inner child is not worthy to be interacting with others, with you guys. So although we're all interconnected, right? Everyone is interconnected. We're really just, as we're isolating ourselves, we're cutting ourselves from the life force, is really what I'm saying. We're cutting ourselves from life force. So my advice to you, if you want to know if you're heading towards isolation, okay, because I do believe that isolation is like the biggest, it's a trap. how being in a state of isolation is super dangerous. It's super, super dangerous, and it is not benefiting anyone. And being stronger, supposedly creating a more thicker armor, it is not the way. That is not the way. You're only cutting yourself from life force, which is connection, because we need connection. To conclude with this topic in terms of isolation is that if you want to know if you're in that state of isolation, this is what I ask of you to do. I want you to really be honest with yourself and ask yourself, could I trust people around me? And if the answer is yes, what do I trust them with? Is it everything? Do I trust them with my feelings? Do I trust them to be able to hold space in my pain? Or do I only trust them with specific things? Am I conditional? Do I only trust them in specific circumstances? Because if you're conditional and only trust them in specific circumstances, you're isolating yourself. Yes, you're isolating yourself. And then the obvious, if you don't trust them, if you don't trust anyone in your family, you're isolated. And let me guess, low-key depressed. Dangerous. That is not going to get better if you don't go and seek help. But anyway, please, if any questions, put your information down there or your question, and I'll be more than happy to go over it in a video. You know, that's what we could do, but with all the love and full acceptance. Josie.